Hi, everyone. I'm Josh Woods, Director of Practice Growth here at Lane Gorman Trubitt. Thanks for joining. Whether you are a familiar face or joining us for the first time, welcome. So, with that being said, joining us today is a very special friend. Hopefully, I can say that. She's a wonderful person, Dr. Haywood. She's a seasoned executive with 25 plus years of experience across finance, technology, healthcare, and government. And she's the proud founder and CEO of Nomad Cyber Concepts. Of course, I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about herself in a moment. But Dr. Haywood, welcome and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me as a part of your series. My background, my full name is Kimberly. It's a long name. So if you guys are looking in LinkedIn, it's Kimberly KJ Haywood. There is an algorithm. So in order for you to find me, you have to put DR dot and then my full name. And no hyphens with the KJ if you're looking for me on LinkedIn. I purposely did that. So set up an algorithm for myself. But my background is eclectic, as you've heard a little bit. I started my career in government, worked myself through corporate Fortune 500 companies over the last 25 plus years. This is my second business in the governance, risk, and technology space. My first company was based out of the San Francisco Bay Area, and Nomad Cyber Concepts is a risk and advisory AI governance firm. And so our team is based here in the DFW area, and they also are remote throughout the US as well. So I look forward to diving into this very important topic with you, Josh.
So
So
important.
let's
Let's
get
go.
into
Let's
it.
go. It is
Yeah,
important. I'm so glad you said that. I mean, this is probably one of the biggest areas that, a lot of business owners, C-suite people are getting this conversation brought into because it's being part of everyday life within, each business. So I'm so glad that we have this. I think it's timely with all the issues and transitional things that are going on in the world. So, but before we actually get started on your slides, I was actually, when I was doing a little bit of research and I was reading up on some things, I saw this article that was talking about FBI's IC3 report. That's the Internet
mhm,
Crime,
yep.
compliant report. And that they just recently added AI related as a crime descriptor for the first time in its 26-year history. And this logged roughly about $900 million in AI attributed losses in that first accounting alone. Like when they went in and they started going back to take a look at that stuff, which they think is, probably actually a little bit more of a undercount than what's
Yeah,
actually out there.
I agree.
So I'm going to ask you this. Why do you think it took this long for AI fraud? Since AI kind of came about truly in the public's eyes in 2022, to get its own category by, a big organization like the FBI.
I mean, I think that's a really great question, Josh. But I'm not actually surprised. One, the 900 million, I agree, is probably a lower number. I mean, it's probably higher than that. So that's just an estimated number. But no shock there. Um, AI didn't really create fraud.
Mm.
It amplified it. That's how I would view it,
Yeah.
right? For years, these incidents have already been underpinning and classified as phishing and identity theft and business email accounts, smishing. So the areas that I'm talking about are technical fraud, aspects of fraud, and AI has been involved the entire process, right? And so this is no surprise, but it's only an amplification of what we're
Right.
seeing today. So we're finally acknowledging that AI is a part of the TAC chain.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, the technology has advanced so much faster really than our ability to detect and govern and secure it. Even
Yeah.
our security practitioners are truly struggling. So in many ways, the data is just kind of catching up to like what's already happening right now, right?
Right.
So if someone clones my voice, which I'm sure they would like to do that if they haven't already, um, then they can convince a CFO to wire money, um, and that's wire fraud.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
A-
wire fraud. So it's definitely theft, but it's also AI enabled fraud. So I'm glad to hear that they're at least gathering enough data to support why leaderships need to start shifting their mindset around governance, privacy, and security.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in this day and age with the AI stuff that is happening. In fact, I'm just going to mention this. I don't know if we have to talk about it, but there's that thing that happened, what was it, a few years ago, not to scare everybody to death, but that thing that happened within Hong Kong or something like that, where employee authorized like 15 wire transfers totaling like,
Hmm.
I think it was over $25 million, after joining a video call where every one of the colleague that was on the call with other people were fake, were deep fake people,
Right,
and that was
right.
2 years ago. Think about the technology and how fast the stuff is rolling right now. I know, in certain people that I've talked to where they are looking at I know you'll talk probably a little bit about this later, but their governance and, the operational processes, especially surrounding AI, they're having to do this like almost monthly, not waiting 3 months, not waiting 6 months,
Yeah, this
not
is
waiting
not
a
the thing.
yearly type thing. It's
Yep.
because
Yeah.
things are just moving so fast. So, let's talk a little bit about like the types of AI that, and I know we'll kind of roughly go over this because I mean it's been out in the world for, what, we're going up on 4 years, and things
Hmm.
like that. But you know, and I really want to talk about like, as we kind of go beyond like I think the persona of being a chatbot, or hey, this is a system that's going to help me write better, which has helped me write better a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of people are looking at implementing this into their operational process, and their everyday thing, and looking at their process and saying, okay, how can AI make this better, right? Can we use agentic AI, those things those systems that can plan and, basically execute multiple steps almost automatically, on their own, you know, but however, that does kind of change the risk conversation, compared to just using the regular generative AI and helping you write better, right?
Right.
So I was wondering, like, what are your thoughts on, the different AIs and the types of AIs and, the things
Um,
that people should be looking for?
Well, one AI is artificial intelligence. So let's start there. And I'm a big proponent on literacy, huge literacy around AI, just like we did 20 years plus ago around cybersecurity, the concept of a security and assurance and governance, educating leaders, educating users, right, regardless of sector, about what is security. So we're repeating that cycle again. So I'd like to keep it simple. And let me simplify it in this way. So generative AI creates, and agentic AI kind of acts, right? So instead of just answering a question, it can complete a series of tasks, i.e., like emails and supporting your even documents that you're doing, right? It can complete tasks for you. It can help you make decisions. It can interact with other systems, and it achieves a goal with very, very little minimal involvement. And that's other than prompting, right? So we prompt. And it's incredibly powerful, though. So it introduces new risk, right? A lot of these Gen AI tools presently are still doing what they call model drifting.
Hmm.
So model drifting is when you've noticed, and I think everyone has, is that you're doing something in the chat GP tool, regardless if it's Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, it doesn't matter what GPT tool you're using. Um, this starts doing model drifting, and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't ask for that. And it starts kind of at this point start making decisions for you, organically, of course, right? It's taking
Right.
information that you've done, but it starts drifting and going down a whole different path. And then you've got to go back and figure out, no, that's not what I meant. That's not what I was looking
Right.
for. And that's the danger, right?
Right.
So it's the difference between assisting, answering, between an assistance answering your question and the one that authorizes to send the email and approve for purchases with which is agentic
Right.
AI.
And it's making sure that you have those action logging in between, those
Right,
human barriers, especially, and it's just looking at any sort of like operational process. When you start looking at any process itself, you always want to have those, it's almost, I call it, QC control, quality controls in
right,
between, you know, they do a little bit of this, and then you have somebody who goes have that oversight to look at it and say, yes, you can continue forward, or no, you're coming up with not the right stuff,
right.
and things like that. So,
Right, right.
um, well, let's move on to like the security and governance piece, like you were just mentioning just a second ago, and
Mm-hmm.
um, I know when I was talking to you about this and kind of going over, your presentation and things like that, you draw a clear line on this slide between the two, right?
I do. I
You have your
really do.
security and you have your governance, right? You got to,
Right,
you're protecting systems versus ensuring responsibility, ability use,
right.
and so in your experience, like which one do business owners assume they've probably already covered when they've maybe actually may have not?
Well, to be fair, right? If you're not working as as an orthopedic
Right.
doctor, right? You don't really know the ins and outs of how your foot works and operates. So it's kind of the same concept, right? So even though security's been around and your foot has been on your body for the moment that you were born, if you were blessed with a foot, so you have it, you know what it is, you
Hmm.
know how you have a good concept of how it works. But with security, it really focuses on protecting the systems, whereas governance, on the other hand, ensures the responsibility, use, and the oversight. So I have this formula, and hopefully your audience can see the slide. So I created this formula called AI governance enablement equals accountability for AI decisions, plus risk management across the life cycle, plus regulatory and compliance alignment. That's the formula for what AI governance enablement looks like. It
Right.
has to take a combination of security and governance,
Right.
in order for it to be fully effective.
Right. But I mean, you have CEOs that are out there that are like, hey, we've got a great IT security team. So we're
Yeah,
covered on AI,
right, right. Yeah,
and I think it's, what is that gap in that statement? I mean, it obviously is the governance piece, right?
right, right,
So just
right.
making sure, and I love your statement there of the AI governance enablement,
Well,
and that.
I do. I'm like you, right? I hear that a lot, right? But cybersecurity and teams play like a real critical role.
Right.
But AI isn't like IT. It's not just IT. And so I think leader at board level are thinking you have AI, just IT have IT handle it, right? It's
Hmm.
not that. It's a business issue now, right?
Hmm.
So security protects the systems, as I mentioned. Governance ensures the AI, and it's being responsible, ethical. It's aligning with the business practice and objectives of the business. So AI is a issue around HR, legal, finance, operations, right? And governance aspects brings everybody together under one set of those expectations. So for leaders, this is what I would advise, is that their huge takeaway from this concept is that security protects the system, governance protects the business. And that's where fraud, liability, that's the area that's the risk
Right.
space.
Talking about the vulnerabilities, things like that. I know on this next slide, which I really liked, we're talking about the impact of AI and AI as I guess, a double-edged sword. It helps with, monitoring, but also increases vulnerability to cyber
Hmm.
criminals. For a smaller organization without a big security budget, is AI, net positive or net negative
That's a
right now?
really good question, Josh. I believe it's net positive because if it's
Mm,
not governed properly, that's that's the risk, right? So, um, yeah, I believe it's net positive. So AI gives smaller organizations the capabilities that they couldn't afford,
hmm
which is a positive, right? So now they can scale up their businesses in a more rapid manner, in a
Right.
safe manner, but they can scale up faster. Even though they can't necessarily afford, FTE, or they can't afford specific professional services. And the key is just adopting it responsibly, adopting AI and ensuring you have governance and ensuring you have security. So, small businesses, I encourage them to continue to use AI to detect fraud. Use it. There are tools out there for
Yeah.
smaller businesses, or automate their compliance process, but still, some need to kind of validate what that outcome is to their customers.
Right.
So they still need to do some validation, especially the more they scale up.
Right.
So from my perspective, that's my thought on it. Definitely net positive for sure.
Right. And I mean, and especially with the technology and the AI technology being robust and changing so much, here recently, and um, you know, being able to really look into those and see, like, okay, is it going to be scalable over time, because a lot of these changes are going to change over time and things like that. So just looking at that software when you are doing your assessments and things like that at that level, just to make sure that you're not getting hoodwinked, because there's a lot of software out there that will look and sound and look great, but probably are maybe a security threat in themselves as well. So,
And
you know,
I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because on this note is especially for smaller enterprises or even
mhm,
mid-sized enterprises, right? You have one person that is in charge of security if you're mid-sized typically, and then you may have one other person. So you're a two-person or three-person shop, but you're a mature company. You've been
right,
around for 15, 20 years, but your security team, your compliance team is a little smaller,
right,
right? Because you're focusing on ROI of the company, R&D for the company, and that's understandable. So in those instances, I'm encouraging companies to still um, collaborate with other businesses, not necessarily in the same marketplace, but similar size. And ask questions to colleagues, get answers. And again, not 100% relying on ChatGPT of any kind to give you all the answers,
right.
because it will give you misinformation, and
Yeah.
there's certain information you can't put into those GPT tools specifically as relates to your particular use case. So I encourage them to do their research and do their find out which tools are better suited for
Yeah.
their specific environment and their sector.
Use your network, you know?
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
in this day and age, we're talking about all this technology and AI and stuff like that, but word of mouth is still strong, people.
People, hey,
I
we're
mean, I
still
love word of
here.
mouth stuff. I mean, I'm gonna believe this guy I've met, and done business with for 20 years, who
Right,
may know more, or, has gone through certain situations a little bit. It's
right.
great. We had our first poll that was sent out there and says, which AI related threat concerns your organization the most. I just wanted to kind of share this with everybody. It's so funny. I mean, it's 62% of those that answered was phishing and business email compromise.
Oh, but it's true. It's true. It still is very powerful tool to exploit a company.
Right.
I mean, it's still real. It's happening. And again, that goes back to education, behavior changes, right, of your users and of the users that are in the enterprises. It's behavior changes. We
Right.
have to begin starting to adopt. Now, I think this is what I do think is going to happen on that side note. And I'm glad that that poll came out. On the side note, I do think that what we're going to see is a shift of people's behavior, more closely monitoring, I mean, personalizing, right? Closely monitoring what's happening when they're getting phone calls,
Hmm.
when they're getting emails that appear to look, even personal emails that appear to look like they're financial institutions, or phone calls that appear and it sounds like it's your
Yeah.
financial institution. So I
Yeah.
think from a personal level, when it starts impacting us personally or our families or healthcare, which it already is, and it starts, I think that's when this shift of behavior that we've been practicing and security practitioners have been pounding, saying, "Hey, don't put your email under your laptop."
Yeah.
Hey,
Exactly.
make sure, if you're working from home, you have visitors that you don't have information about our
Well,
company just sitting around
I hope
your
not. I hope we're past that at this stage, and everybody's
so
please don't put that down. Don't use the
please,
zero
please,
one two three
right.
four five, as your password. Um, and you're absolutely right. It's funny. I was at a seminar one time, and this guy come up, and he was used to be a hacker, but then turned to be a good hacker. On the good
White
side, and
hat, white
yeah,
hat
and he was
hacker.
talking about like, I mean,
Hmm.
these guys, if you don't think that they don't have their own AI, they have their own AI. There's a dark web AI out there that they use, and they can come in
There's
and
a
they.
GPT fraud AI that Interpol and FBI and
Hmm.
CIA has been attempting to crack down on. They launched GPT fraud, and I'm talking dark web, right?
Right.
They launched GPT fraud 3 years ago.
Hmm.
3 years
That's
ago.
right.
Now, they've probably changed the name, but the concept is the same. And so they're still using that algorithm. You don't even have to do a whole lot of tweaking because, again, you're thinking about users, right? They're not thinking about security. Enterprises aren't thinking about governance as much. Regarding AI, it's like, we've got to implement, we've got to execute as quickly as we can. So GPT fraud, is actually a tool that has been used, and they found it. So again, I'm sure they've changed the name since 3 years ago. It's probably called something really cool right now,
Yeah.
but that was 3 years ago. That, I mean, can you imagine what that tool can do today?
Oh my gosh, so much. I mean, it it was very scary conversation that he was, or presentation he was saying. I was just like, I don't want to pick up the phone and talk to anybody anymore. I don't want to get on a video call anymore. I don't want to put my video up, even though it's really important to do that because of that human interaction. It's scary. It is really, really scary. Now
But
there are
we
But there
are
are things
not
that you can do that,
bots.
to protect yourself and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I love the fact that we're talking a little bit about that today. Well, let's talk like before I start going down my rabbit hole a little bit. Um, we talk about the internal monitoring. What are some things that they can kind of like do, or what are some things that they can kind of look for? You list like use of AI to improve targeting. I know you kind of talked a little bit about that, not expand, surveillance as a principle. But
Mhm.
where's the line? At what point does legitimate fraud monitoring start to kind of feel like surveillance to their own employees?
Um, Internal monitoring can, the process of internal monitoring is your first line of defense,
Hmm.
which are your employees, your contractors. For internal monitoring around AI, it's a lot more comprehensive and more in depth than it used to be back in the day, right? So that whole framework of monitoring your enterprise is not going to look just like your typical, hey, let's execute like we did governance, risk, and compliance back in the day, and we got a SOC report, or we have, I mean, SOC SOX reporting, right?
Right.
Or we have any type of SOC 2, type 1, type 2 reporting, things like that. The deal is really is that monitoring is everything that an employee does. And the goal is to identify the unusual activity of that risk of what are they doing, right? And getting a hand on that and what level of transparency about that monitoring are they doing, asking the right questions and running tabletop exercises. So I'm just going to give you an example. This actually happened in real time. There was a six-figure wire transfer,
Okay.
2 o'clock in the morning, and
Okay.
it was to another company. I'm sure this has happened more than one case. This is just one use case that I know of. And it's not a privacy issue. That was the issue. What was the issue? I would ask the audience, that six-figure wire transfer at 2 o'clock in the morning, who executed it? Did they have authorization? Was there accountability and oversight to that transfer? Was anyone notified? And someone called at
Right.
2 o'clock and was saying, hey, this is what I'm about to do because I received authorization from the CFO or from the CEO or someone at a leadership level. It sounds like them,
Hmm.
right? They're speaking, I mean, sounds
Yeah.
identical to them,
Right.
Oh, I'm at
Right.
an airport. You hear airport noise in the background. Oh, I know they're traveling.
Right.
And it's completely deep faked. That's not a privacy issue at all.
Right.
So that, I mean, that just kind of goes to that aspect of we
Right.
are our first line of defense.
Right. So, okay, so with that said, let's talk about, detecting, let's talk about fraud detection, how do we protect ourselves? And I know that when, I was looking at the presentation on the fraud detection, column, you mentioned adaptive models that, learn from confirmed fraud cases. How do smaller firms or smaller companies without maybe a data science team that's actually going
Mhm.
back behind there and pulling all this research and information can actually kind of get access to that kind of like tool versus it just being something only, larger companies with a lot of money can do?
Yeah, and I mean, again, that's a good question. And I go back to utilizing what they have in their own resources, right? Utilizing if they don't have an adaptive tool model, which does take time, right? To it takes time for a model to be refined. It takes time
Right.
for a model to actually be tested. So if they don't have something like that, what they can do is go back to the old school way, and sometimes that's a good way, which is run tabletop exercises within their
Hmm.
enterprise. And
Yeah.
so that way they're running their own use cases and saying, hey, this is where we've identified some gaps. This is where we need to improve in these areas. And then they can solicit, a consultant, firm like ours or anyone else out there that can help them assimilate that. But I would say utilize what you have if you don't have the financial resources to do it. And tabletop exercises are not dead, they're not gone, they haven't gone away because you get live data if you run those type of exercises within your enterprises, and that where you can see, okay, this is a situation, we've got a gap,
Yeah.
we need to address that.
I mean, other than those type of things, is there other type of driven tools that people can kind of use other than just, particular like process that they need to go through, or is there software that actually helps them, or is it just something that they just need to kind of put in place, like, you know, um, what am I trying to say? I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the many of the tools for organizations use like let's say it's a smaller organization, but it's in fintech or finance, right?
That's what
Straight
I'm
like
saying. Hmm.
banking, right? So they use payment card processing systems, whether even if it's a smaller system. Microsoft 365 already has some areas of aspects of opportunity, I'm not opportunities, I'm sorry, tools for those enterprises, for smaller businesses. They have accounting platforms that are already including AI. They can run and utilize what they already have in their enterprise. Most
Hmm.
small businesses are Microsoft 365 set up, right?
Sure.
Many of them are. That's just right. So this is the day and age we live in. So utilizing what they already are paying for,
Right.
maybe upgrading to a solution tool that allows them to see and do some back end monitoring of what's going on within those transactions, and if there's any gaps in those transactions. Most smaller businesses don't think about, okay, I have a Microsoft Office business, account. I didn't think about all the other different applications that I can utilize.
Yeah.
And
And I think
so
it's I'm just go ahead. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no, 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 you go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I think it is important that, when you do start looking at these different tools and other softwares, you talked about like other software, like, accounting tools that are out there that, we even been looking at and stuff like that, just making sure that, they have the level of a compliance, or,
Right.
SOC, especially compliance, getting a lot of those certifications, from them before you actually start to and to look at as part of your evaluation process, right? Before
And
you
that's
even jump
called,
into some sort of software, because if you do bring in the software that
yeah,
may not be SOC, compliant or,
right.
have certain certifications, you're just opening yourself up to vulnerabilities.
And again, if you, especially if you're in the finance space, right, and you're a smaller business, you really want to make sure you're doing your due diligence. I would agree. That's your third party. I don't
Yeah.
care if you're a two-person shop or if you're 17, 18, 20 people. You still want to do your homework on making sure that you're protecting your IP, right?
Yeah.
CYA, as we call it, right?
Yeah,
You want to make
exactly.
sure that you are really protecting all of your intellectual property, how you've built and spent time in building that business. And that means taking the time or delegating it and taking the time to making sure, have we actually vetted that particular vendor that we've
Hmm.
never heard of that offers an accounting application?
Right.
And our company is a good example. We're a smaller firm, but we have to vet every single vendor. We have to, right? So that's only protecting us at the end of the day. Because they always say you want a lawyer after something happens,
Yeah.
right? You need
Right. Exactly.
insurance, like you don't need insurance when nothing is going on. You need
Right.
insurance after
When it's happening,
after
it's
the,
like,
right. Like I need insurance now. So
yeah,
I,
but
I
there are
don't think
things that you can do to prevent from that, right?
you
I mean,
can. You
set
can.
yourself up to succeed. Don't set yourself up
Yeah.
to fail, and then
Right.
after the fact, then you're having to spend extra money to have to pay for the mistakes of maybe
Yeah.
not,
And that has wiped out many mid-sized businesses, Josh, over the
yeah,
years.
absolutely.
Just not complying. They're not here anymore.
Right,
And that's serious business. It's not worth the risk.
right. Well, let's talk about some of the meteor, numbers. Or the meteor part of this deck, and some of the fraud numbers and things like that. I mean, um, because I mean, some of them are staggering,
Yeah.
when you start looking at it. I know Deloitte, projects that I think they did some sort of report that generative AI enabled fraud losses in the US was like it's going to hit $40 billion by 2027.
Ugh.
That's up from 12.3 billion that was happening in 2023. So, I guess my
Hmm.
question to you, Dr. Haywood, is what's driving that curve? More attackers? Is it better tools? In the
Hmm.
hands of the same attackers? I mean,
Um,
I don't know.
I think
Maybe.
it's both. Honestly, I think it's both. And let me unpack this for a moment. I think there are more attackers because there's a lot more money to be made. We're vulnerable.
Easier access to the
Easy,
tools,
easy access. We're easy
right?
access, right? Um, but it's more importantly that we have better tools. in place,
Hmm.
right? So generative AI, as much as some really love it, some, are still trying to decide if they have that love-hate relationship with it. But generative AI is made sophisticated attacks faster, cheaper, and far more convincing. Just like we can do our operational work, they're doing operational work every day, 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, nonstop. They don't
Right.
sleep, from that concept, right?
Yeah.
So what's used today? Um, so we plan on keeping on what's happening in minutes. This is what we're thinking, happening minutes. What they're thinking about what's happening in seconds. So criminals are scaling fraud in the same way businesses are scaling innovation. Fast, quick, as quick as they can. So
Yeah.
years ago, like your audience mentioned, phishing emails was often easy to spot because it was poor grammar. You could misspellings,
Hmm.
wording wasn't quite off, right? But today, they can execute and impersonate an email that sounds identical to you and
Yeah.
how you write. And so, no, I still go back to the old adage: AI didn't invent fraud; it industrialized it. I mentioned it earlier.
Right.
It's just really revolutionized AI fraud on a whole different scale.
Right. It just gives people access to do it maybe easier. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Faster, you know,
Faster, easier. Yeah.
yeah, faster and easier. Um, Going back to what you were talking about with I think there was one thing you were talking about audio, right? When you have
Mm-hmm.
somebody calling at the middle of the night, that CEO, which is probably on what a lot of CEOs lose sleep over, right? Those type of fraud things that happen. And I think one research group found that only about 0.1% of people can reliably tell a real voice or video from an AI generated one these
Mm-hmm.
days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so if a person can't detect it, what does that mean for like trying to train your own employees? Programs that can rely on helping them being able to kind of spot the fake over what's real.
What I've recommended, my team and I've recommended, because we various backgrounds in
Hmm.
cyber and risk and compliance,
Hmm.
is that we kind of rethink how organizations are taking this approach, number one, with their employees. They have these videos that are cybersecurity videos that you're required to take, right? Most organizations have that. If you're a mid-sized organization, you have some level of training, something, right?
Right,
For your employees when they're onboarding.
right.
So traditionally, we trained employees to spot a suspicious email. Now we've got fake phone calls. And so there are techniques that employees, senior leadership can start adopting, which is setting up a special code, meaning that that code changes on a weekly basis. Meaning, if I have two or three employees in my enterprise and I am a CFO, or if in the law, I'm a GC, then I have a special code in terms of phone calls, right? You have
Mm,
my text message because they can text you as well. I need you to verify the code. That code might change weekly, that code might change monthly, but you can ask those simple questions: a code word, a code name. Those are all MFAs, those all multi-factor authentication processes that cybersecurity has been adopting for quite some time. You can do the same thing with deepfake calling, video calls. Ask them a random question. You remember that video? Remember that video that we saw last week? You remember that video we went to go see last week? Asking test questions that are so human related that
yeah,
there's no way,
that
if
is going to
someone's
take.
on that video call,
Yeah,
right, and it's really a deep fake,
right,
they can't answer that question.
right.
Because one, you never went out with that person to
Yeah,
watch any
yeah,
video,
yeah. At least
right?
fake them out. I mean, fake the faker,
Right.
right? Fake the
You
faker.
you fake you use fake you use yeah you use artificial scenarios to combat deepfake, and the
Right.
deepfake from voice and deepfake from audio.
I like this. One of our poll questions came back here. Is how often, and it kind of relates to what we were just talking about. How often does your organization conduct cybersecurity or fraud awareness training? And 52% say multiple times a year. Congratulations to those. Wow, that's amazing. I know that we do ours. I mean, we go through extensive training, on a monthly basis and yearly basis. So at least 34% is once a year. Okay. I mean,
Okay,
that's great. I'm sure it's for a lot of different reasons, probably insurance reasons. But I
right.
mean, that's great. Either way, get the
It
training in,
is, it is. But
but we,
I would encourage that organizations adopt something unique, right? Do something uniquely different. The cybersecurity trainings, I think, are still very critical, as we know, right? Because you just read off of the $40 billion FBI report, and that's still phishing. It's still very high. But I also think the criticality of protecting your IP and your
yeah,
organization is really the deeper risk, which is it going to really hurt to adopt, a code phrase or code word or testing out things in addition to that?
yeah,
So I'm a person that kind of thinks out the box, dude. I'm a color outside the lines kind of girl. So
yeah. I'm gonna answer this quick chat question because I just think it's timely and kind of funny. It says, "How do we really know this is you, Josh?" I guess you're gonna have to take my word on that one.
I tested him, you guys. I tested it. I tested
There you
it.
go. It's been tested. I am for real. All right, so let's going on to the next slide here. We talk about contributors of AI fraud. The slide notes, occupational fraud is fundamentally an insider problem. Um, and you talk about like what was it, loss of 145,000 per case. Let's see, how does AI change the insider threat specifically versus the external like attacker story we usually kind of hear about?
um When I think about insider threats, I kind of picture someone intentionally
Yeah.
stealing information,
Yeah.
right, in your enterprise. But today, many insider threats and incidents aren't necessarily malicious. They're well-intended employees who are using AI without really understanding what the risks are. Um, and that's where it goes back to me being a huge proponent about AI literacy, Josh, because you, you've got to understand what you're using. It's a tool. I have a hammer. I need to know how to use the hammer. I have a
Yeah.
drilling tool. I need to know how to use the drilling tool.
Right.
So you have to be able to bolt on education of AI for yourself. So AI has expanded the insider threat, and with intentional misuse and unintentional exposure. That's the key exposure here. So an employee uploads confidential information to a public AI tool. Let's say it's
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT, right? And just to save time, they're rushing, and we've had all make mistakes when we're rushing because we've all been in cybersecurity professionals have been caught in phishing attempts because we've got 1,000 different things going on, but they
Yeah.
weren't trying to harm the organization intentionally, but it was sensitive information that they're responsible for. And now it's kind of left the company, exposed. So I definitely I would want part of my takeaway here today with everyone is to think about insider threat is not necessarily always bad employees, but employees with that are good employees that unfortunately get themselves associated with very powerful tools like a GPT tool and not fully literate about how to use and what the proper processes is, policies and procedures, despite policies and procedures of what they've signed.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, let's talk a little bit about the blind spots in governance a little bit. excessive trust in AI. I know a lot of people are, it is kind of a new tool that's out there. I know it's been around for almost 4 years, but there is a lot of trust that's out there that I know a lot of people are like, well, I'm going to put this information in there and whatever it spits out, it's great. We're going with it. Let's run with it without any sort of, I guess, oversight or review or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
and,
Mm-hmm.
but that also is on what type of AI software that we should be using, what kind of, software we should be using. And let's ask the tough questions of how do we govern what type of software we use? Who gets to use it? You know, what type of um, use cases? Because this was something I was talking to somebody just today, internally today, where we were talking about like, we got to look at our software, our AI software, and we got to look at like how we use it and who gets to use it and how they get to use it. They
Mm-hmm.
may not need all the different tools of that happens with
Right.
AI.
Right.
Let's give them what they need to kind of do their job, and that's what they can use to you know help keep our firm as safe as possible without.
Yeah, I agree. Agree.
So, I mean,
Um,
how does that
hmm.
go on a day to day, and what have you
uh,
seen? Let me ask you that. What have you seen from
I
business
I don't
operations?
think my personal opinion is I don't think that we're overusing any GPT tools, particularly for business enterprises or utilizing marketing tools or storytelling tools, whatever the case may be. I really think I don't think it's overly dramatic, in my opinion. I
Yeah,
think it goes back to the literacy aspect of it, right? It's just ensuring that employees are accepting Gen AI tools um, in in a very convenient and responsible way and transparent. Hey, I want to execute X, Y, and Z. I'd like to use a GPT tool, getting permission, having those open conversations with enterprise and internally. Leadership's having conversations with their other people on their team. What are you using? We had to do the same thing,
hmm,
right? Even internally, our organization, we're a remote company. So we needed to know what every single GPT tool is being used in our enterprise. So we have to ask that question with the hope that, right, they're going to be not only transparent, but also have some ethics behind that. And
yeah,
that is, I don't mind you using the tools. I just need to know what you're using, right? Because I need to make sure that we're protecting our IP and also we're safeguarding you because you could also be exploited as well. And you can lose
right,
your job.
right,
You lose your job.
yeah,
So I think at the end of the day, we're at a point where it's okay. That's just my opinion. I think it's fine about the usability of it. I think it's just going back to being transparent with your enterprises that you're working with and you're working
yeah,
for to say, this is what we're using. Can we get your permission? Do we have it okay? What do we need to do to ensure that there is some oversight to that,
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there should be stronger oversight on the usage of our AI systems and whatever we're using it in, whether it is a third party or it is just somebody who's paying the Claude Pro subscription, and using it for work without you knowing it.
Without you knowing it is the key. It's like, I didn't know, but I was wondering, your work has really improved.
Yeah, that's overnight, especially
Yeah, it's
overnight.
like you went from a D minus to an A plus. How's that?
So talking about like oversight and reviews, and let's talk about like what are the triggers that that's going to be the human review, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so of those like five triggers, um, which one do organizations most often skip? And what's the cost of skipping it? I mean, I'm assuming each one of these has a cost associated with it, and if you're a business owner,
Mm-hmm.
CEO, you're looking at the cost from, top down. So, you know,
Right. If I had to choose one, I would say Oh, I wanted to go back to a question real quick. You
Oh yeah.
mentioned we talked about something, but I wanted to mention about RBAC, which is role-based access.
Mm,
Many security organizations are still you use that as a part of identifying the use of who's assigned to what AI, GPT tool, any AI
right.
tool, agentic, it doesn't matter. I would definitely recommend using RBAC as a tool. It's also a part of a OWASP AI recommendation, which is a cybersecurity industry they've been doing. That's across every sector. So I
Okay.
just wanted to point that out real quick. So to answer your question, this is a hard one for me because I think all five, but I'm going to choose one because I'm on the spot. Um, and I can tell you, even as a governance person, I wouldn't go straight to policy. So I would knock that out. And if we had a red mark, I wouldn't say that'd be number one. I would definitely not say model limitation. Nah. Um, but I would say mandatory escalation, between mandatory escalation, any actions that could result in discipline, investigation, and reporting.
Right.
That is a very high risk, and that discipline, loss of revenue, loss of clients, loss of right. I think that's where the mandatory escalation and the over human site overview, if we had to do a gap, that would be that would be the one that I definitely say to highlight the most of the
Okay.
four of the five.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, talk about the mandatory escalations a little bit more though. Like you talk about like it's discipline, investigation reporting. I mean, is there and do you have an example that
Yeah.
you can kind
So
of
I mean,
share?
yeah, so for example, under this concept, the payment falls within the approval dollar amount,
Okay.
right? And it's going through a vendor in another country,
Uh-huh.
and the context matters at this point. So AI might not recognize the significance, but the experienced employee will. If the experienced employee does not, and it's not escalated, and the experienced employee says, well, this doesn't literally fall in the threshold that I can approve, right? So
Yeah.
it's and or in this case, right? And there's a payment that falls in a certain dollar amount. They have that seven limit, but there's no oversight. And that person's like, well, I already know this vendor. I know them well. We've been working with them for 5, 10 years. I'm going to go ahead and approve another 10,000 or
Yeah.
50,000 because I have authorization up to this. My boss is on vacation, but they know me. It's okay. I'm going to
Hmm.
go ahead and do that. Right. Well, at this point, now you've realized at a later time that one, you didn't escalate it. Two, now we have a disciplinary action with the employee. Now we've lost that 50,000 plus whatever they gave them, what their limit was. So let's say
Right.
$150,000 that you fully approved and you went over your limit and you didn't get approval. And
Right.
so now you've got a whole investigation process that costs money and time and resources to your organization, reputation, but it was AI generated. You got a deep fake in that situation, or you got phished, whatever the situation
Hmm.
was, it was a malicious attempt. So the aspect of elevating that, the mandatory escalation is that human element, asking the right questions at the right time when you don't have the authority, or
Right.
if you do have the authority, just having, like you said earlier, a Q&A. Do
Yeah.
a check and balance and make sure.
Yeah. See, AI can't do everything.
It cannot.
You still have to have humans. For those people,
We
I know there's some people
matter,
that are like
right?
AI is going to do it all, and
We
kudos
matter.
to you, but
Here.
I may be old school. I still think there should be some human interaction. Um,
Absolutely.
well, that's awesome. So let's go ahead and I know we're coming up on time here, and we'll go ahead and go to the next section here. Um, you know, for those that have joined us, so let's say that there's a business owner that's out there today, and that is listening to what you have graciously, talked about. What's the big walk away here? You know,
Mm,
what's the one thing that they can do this week to kind of move on, move from, okay, we've got an AI policy on paper now, right? We went to our
right,
lawyers, we got an AI policy, we put it on
right,
paper to
right.
actually to that operational practice.
So I'm going to do a conundrum here. So
Yeah.
I'm going to double back. So I would encourage leaders to ask one simple question to themselves, which is, where is AI already being used within my organization? And because most companies are using AI, like we discussed in this conversation, right? More than they realize. And you
Yeah.
can't govern what you don't know that already exists.
Yeah.
You can't. You can't put any parameters around it. You can't put guardrails around it because people are not being transparent, or you're not asking the right question. And it's okay not to know,
Yeah.
um, but you can still leverage other resources. Inventorying AI tools, find out what's going on in your enterprise.
Hmm.
How many tools are being used? Are we using marketing? Are we using something around data analytics? Are we using financial reporting tools? What are we using? What's our inventory of AI tools? And understand who owns those tools, just like we've done in the same practice of I'm sorry, cybersecurity, which is who's the application for this owner and this owner and this owner. I know you've gone through that before. Well,
Yeah.
I'm the application owner. And then you go
Yeah.
through the audits, right?
Yeah.
You have to take ownership of where the data is used and whether the appropriate oversight is in place. And that's just to me a first practical step beyond policy.
Absolutely. I think that is number one. I think you got to get your arms wrapped around, what is being used internally. First and foremost, you have to get a listing down before you can even do anything else, you know. And making, I think I love your point, have your employees be transparent about it. We need to figure out, like, are you using it or not? Have you been using it? What have you been using? Where have you been using it? What applications have you used? And then trying to centralize that as much as possible because you're not going to be able to govern you can't govern the Wild West. You just can't.
What do you mean?
I'm just saying. I mean, unless you're, Wyatt Earp or something. I don't know.
I was gonna say, if you're wide earth, you can do it, right?
Well, I know we're running up on 1 hour, and I just want to say thank you so much, KJ, for hopping on. I do want to point out here to the audience, we do have Dr. Haywood's book. Here we go again, except it's AI, which is fantastic. Just real quick, KJ, what was this book kind of written for? Is this for like the practitioners that are out there or the executives?
I'm glad you asked that. It's actually for both. It's for
Oh,
both. So it
there you go.
speaks to frontline employees as well as those in the cyberspace, finance. It's a industry agnostic
Okay,
book, purposeful. So
perfect.
that means it's going to cross in every area of the business, legal, HR, ethics. I mean, across the sector, privacy. But it's written even at the board level. So it's written predominantly across different areas of the business so that it's a fun read. And I like to tell people like
Yay.
that it's fun. It
That's
is not
awesome.
boring. I'm
It
not boring.
isn't. Actually, I am right in the middle of reading it, so it's not boring people. It's great.
It is,
Well,
it's
there's the
fun. Oh,
QR
and the
code to
French
go
version
ahead.
is coming out. The French version is out as well.
Well,
Parlez-vous français? Yeah, parlez-vous français?
there you go
French.
for our
Mhm.
French audience out there. You can get that version as well. Again, there's their QR code. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Haywood, for
Thank
hopping on. This
you.
is wonderful, great
Thank you.
information. And if you want to find out where she's at, you can find her on LinkedIn. Just put in, Nomad Cyber Concepts. I'm sure that can also try and get her linked up on LinkedIn as well. So thank you, everybody, for their time. And thank you, Dr. Haywood. I appreciate it. And we'll
Thank
see
you,
you next
Josh.
time.